On today's episode, we recap the 2024 Columbus Fishing Expo, including some live trivia with listeners from the show. We take a look at everything that I bought at the show personally. A promising young gun wins the MLF Tackle Warehouse Invitational at Sam Rayburn, and we answer your fishing questions about cost-effective 300-size reels, some of the top tips for kayak success, and battery selection for your boat. All that and more on this episode of Tackle Talk.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Dance, and you're listening to Tackle Talk.
Welcome to the Tackle Talk podcast, brought to you by American Legacy Fishing and Outdoors. World-class fishing gear, unmatched personal service. Now, here's your host, Andrew Hayes.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Tackle Talk podcast. As always, we are brought to you by American Legacy Fishing and Outdoors. And first off, ALF wanted to thank everybody that came out to their open house this past weekend. Brent Ayler was there doing seminars and meet and greets and hanging out with everybody. They had some killer sales. It was almost 20% off everything at the shop. And right now, if you missed out, no worries. They have some killer deals going on right now on their website for everybody to take advantage of. Most notably, G Loomis GLX rods right now are as low as $299.99. Now, if you're not a G Loomis person or you're not super familiar with G Loomis, those are normally like $450 to $500 rods. They're very expensive rods. They're great rods from G Loomis. Right now, over at American Legacy, all GLX models starting at $299.99. Some of them go up a little bit depending on what model you want, but as low as $299.99 for a G Loomis GLX is an insane deal. You're not going to find that anywhere else on the internet, not even close. So you can go over and check that out. I also don't know if you guys know about this. They have 3 exclusive colors that ALF worked directly with Beast Coast to make of the Beast Coast Lil Magnum. Those are fan favorite flipping jigs. They have the Natural, they have Brown Magic, and they have GP Blue. Those 3 colors in the Beast Coast Lil Magnum are only available at AmericanLegacyFishing.com. They're exclusive colors to ALF. Also, if you've been interested in the new Fenwick rods, the World Class and Elites are now in stock at ALF. As always, they have killer deals on used gear right now. They still have a few SLX MGL 70s, the left-handed models, available from Shimano, normally $150, right now $99.99. So some great deals over at American Legacy. Go check them out. It's www.americanlegacyfishing.com. And as always, if what you're looking for is not on sale, use code TACKLETALK10. Tackle Talk 10 saves you 10% on almost everything on that website. Some exclusions apply, but not many. Almost everything, 10% off just for listening to Tackle Talk over at www.americanlegacyfishing.com. All right, folks, before we jump into things really fast, if my voice sounds weird, I apologize. I lost my voice late yesterday after the expo, after talking for like 3 days, so I don't normally lose my voice, but it was completely gone. It's finally kind of come back throughout the day today, so I think we're okay right here, but if for some reason my voice cracks like I'm a 12-year-old or you can't hear something, I apologize. I'm just glad that the voice is back enough to even do the show today because it was not looking pretty last night and early this morning. But we'll get to the expo here in a second. We've got a lot to cover on that, but first we're going to start out with a little bit of pro fishing because the Major League Fishing Tackle Warehouse Invitationals kicked off their season at Sam Rayburn Reservoir down in Brooklyn, Texas this past weekend. And even though we don't normally cover the Tackle Warehouse Invitationals, I think this is important because of who won. So the Tackle Warehouse Invitationals are kind of like the step below the Major League Fishing that you're used to, which is the Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour. This is kind of the qualifying circuit for that. With that being said, really fast, I want to go through your top 10 in reverse order, and then we'll obviously tell you why we're talking about this. So 10th place, Ramey Colson Jr., 9th place, Alec Morrison, 8th place, Nick LeBrun, 7th place, Mark Condren, 6th place, Nick Hatfield, 5th place, Keith Poche, 4th was Cal Lane, 3rd, Marshall Hughes, 2nd place, Jake Lawrence, and 1st place, Drew Gill. So we mentioned this because of Drew Gill. First off, congrats to Drew. He won by like 1.5 pounds and takes home a cool 80 grand. But if the name Drew Gill rings a bell, that's because he finished third last week in the Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour event down on Toledo Bend, with Dustin Connell finishing first. Spencer Sheffield, I believe, was second. And then Drew was in third, Jacob Wheeler in fourth. And as we said last week, you got to watch out for Drew Gill. This is a kid that's crazy with his electronics. He's great at the offshore, open water, suspended fish type deals. And then boom, a week later, he wins down on Sam Rayburn. So we mentioned this event just to hammer home the fact that I think the name Drew Gill is going to be a name that you're going to hear a lot over the next couple years, so you better get familiar with it. All right, next, let's jump into our full recap from the 2024 Columbus Fishing Expo this past weekend, February 9th through 11th. And I want to start out with a sincere thank you. Thank you to every single person that came out this past weekend. It was awesome meeting all of you. We literally had hundreds of people come through over the weekend. It was fantastic. Like the first 2 days, whatever those days were, like Friday and Saturday, but I think they were probably 15, 16, 17 hours total that we spent between just those 2 days. I bet there was like a total of maybe 15 minutes where there was a break where we didn't have listeners at the booth. Obviously, Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, always light for the show. But even on Sunday, we had a ton of you guys come through, but Friday and Saturday were bonkers. And it kind of hit me as I was driving home yesterday, Sunday evening, just how incredible it is to see this whole thing grow. Because, you know, you think back to like the first year we ever did an expo. Yeah, you had some people stop by, but it was more like trying to educate people on what the show was. Because back then, like half the people didn't even know what a podcast was. Like we were pretty early on in this type of thing. So it was more educating people that, hey, there are, you know, essentially radio shows on your phone that you can listen to, and they're not live, and you can tune in whenever you want. There's this really cool app called Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and it was a lot of that. Well, now, obviously, the entire world has changed. There's podcasts everywhere. Everybody and their mother has a podcast, so at least people know what podcasts are. But I mean, then you go to like the second year, the third year that we ever had booths at these type of things, and yeah, maybe there was someone that came by every, 10, 15 minutes or so. We get a listener come through, and we get to talk, and it was awesome. But this past weekend, it was nonstop, and it was so humbling, so cool to see. We had a line at the booth of people waiting to come up and talk, and it was just like the most awesome experience ever. So I can't thank you guys enough. I mean, the people that are coming up and saying how much they enjoy the show, how much it helps you be closer to your kids or your parents, or, you busted your PB this year using one of the tips from the past episodes. That kind of stuff is incredibly cool. And then just talking to some of you and finding out where you drove from, it like hits you right in the chest. We had people drive from Wisconsin. Shout out to Jude. Jude's the man, and his family, the Pettigrews, one of the nicest families I've ever met. But I wrote some of these down too. We had people coming from all over the place. We had Byron from Missouri. We had Nathan from Illinois. Jack and Rich who were from the East Coast somewhere, I think New Jersey. But then we got to meet a lot of you guys that were a little bit more local too. Josh, Scott, Carson, Michael, Wyatt, Chuck, Mark, like hundreds of you came through over this weekend. And whether you just stopped by to say hey and to chat, whether you snagged, some micro buzzes or Jigmaster sled heads, tackle talk hats, tumblers, decals, or you stopped in for the seminar, I just want you to know I am extremely grateful for each and every one of you that came to hang out and support the show. We, honest to goodness, have the best listeners in the entire fishing community. I will put money on that. You guys are as genuine, as positive, as friendly as can be, and it was a treat getting to hang out with all of you and meet you all this past weekend. So that was the first part of this weekend. I know, again, a little sappy here, but just a massive thank you to everybody that stopped by. It is, again, humbling, and just know that I appreciate you taking the time out of your weekend to come either by yourself, with your family, whatever it may be, and making that part of your weekend plan to kind of come hang out. And it was just awesome to see. So thank you, thank you, thank you. That is obviously the first and most important thing I want to say after this weekend. But now we also get to do a recap of the expo, and we're going to start with what I bought. So when it comes to like shopping in an expo, I think there's probably two reasons why an expo is a great place to shop. One, you can actually save money because you're buying them directly from the source. A lot of times this tackle or this gear, you're buying it from the company. So there's no middleman, there's no markup, anything like that. Also, it shows it's kind of customary to knock your price down a little bit and sort of have like a show price or a show special. So we did a little bit of that too, right? The sled heads and the micro buzzes were $4. Usually they're anywhere from $4.50 to $5. So you save a little bit of money. You know, some folks may charge tax. Most people don't charge tax. Some people will haggle with you a little bit and you can save a little bit of money there. So it is a great place to just save money on gear that you're going to buy anyway. The other reason that it's cool, obviously, is you get the chance to buy from small businesses that you might not even know about, you might not have even heard about before, and you get to actually pick up the product, look at it, inspect it, talk to probably the owner of the company who's right behind the booth actually selling them. So you do get a chance to kind of expand your horizons in terms of the gear that you're actually using and find some new cool companies. So we did a little bit of both of that. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to open up my bag right here and we're going to go through the gear that actually came home with me after the show was over. So the first thing as I open up my little shopping bag here is I bought a bait that I actually wanted to fish for probably a year or two now and really put time in with. I've like tried it out for half a second, but as far as actually going out there and fishing it hard, I do kind of want to fish this bait because I'll be honest, I don't think I'm going to like it. I'm like pretty sure this is a bait that I'm not going to enjoy throwing, but I want to go out there and fish it hard and make sure. And it is the 13 Fishing Jabberjaw crankbait. So I picked it up for $5 flat. It was in a bin that one of the booths had, and I looked at it and I said, heck, you know what, right, $5, I'll get one of these, I'll give it a try. If you remember back to when this first came out, we talked about it on the show. It is like a regular square bill crankbait, like 1.5 size actual hard bait, but then the bill, instead of a clear plastic bill or like a circuit board bill or some other materials that normal crankbaits might have their bills made out of, this bill is metal, and here's the big thing, it vibrates. So it's actually able to kind of pivot back and forth and sort of wag or waddle, I guess. I don't know what you really want to call it, but it goes back and forth, obviously where the name Jabberjaw comes from. That crankbait lip actually moves. And so it kind of blurs the line between a crankbait and like a bladed jig, like a chatterbait or something like that. And to me, that sounds pretty counterintuitive because with a crankbait, I want a hard bill that will deflect off of cover, off of wood, off of rocks, whatever you're throwing it around, that quick, hard deflection off of cover with that hard bill that doesn't move, obviously, is what triggers your strikes. Well, since obviously this bill wiggles back and forth, it's not going to deflect as hard off of rocks or wood because that bill has give to it. So it's like a breakaway bill. It's not a rigid bill, which means that when it hits something, that bill will move a little bit and you're not going to get that immediate, precise deflection. But on the flip side, I think if you're throwing it in open water, that's probably where this bill shines because it moves back and forth. So again, it adds action to a bait that probably just usually waddles back and forth. Now you get this sort of like, chatterbait type deal on that bill going back and forth. So, if you're throwing it in the middle of the water column, maybe this becomes a bait that you actually can use. But to me, a crankbait is made for like digging bottom, hitting bottom. It's not a bait you throw in the middle of the water column. So in that instance, if I am going to throw it suspended, I'm probably just going to throw a chatterbait. So I kind of fail to see where this should be in somebody's box, but there's only one way to find out. So I picked one up. I will report back. 13 Fishing Jabberjaw for $5. All right, we will get to the rest of the purchases here in just a second and some fun interactive segments that we recorded at the expo. But first, we are brought to you in part by Dakota Lithium. And Dakota Lithiums are the best batteries on the market for a couple reasons. They're twice the power of traditional batteries. They're half the weight. They charge up to 5 times faster. They last up to 4 times longer. They have 100% U.S. customer support, and they come with a whopping 11-year warranty. You guys heard me talk a couple weeks ago about the support that I actually got through Dakota Lithium. I broke one of my handles, sent them an email, like as me, just as a regular customer, sent them an email, and boom, they sent me a new handle. They actually went in the back, I think is what the guy said in the email, and actually took a handle off of a good battery and just sent me that handle. That's what you get with Dakota Lithium. You're not going to get that with the cheapo Amazon battery that you bought that has a name name that you've never heard of. It probably won't even be a brand in 3 weeks because all those cheap companies just switch their brand name over and over again, or they get bought out, or they just keep moving and changing hands. It's not what you're going to get with Dakota Lithium. So you can go check out www.dakotalithium.com. And as always, we are here to save you money. So you can use code TACKLETALK10, TACKLETALK10 at checkout. Any day of the week, you're going to save 10% off your purchase just for listening to Tackle Talk. So you can head over again, www.dakotalithium.com, use code TACKLETALK10, save 10% off your next battery, and run the best with Dakota Lithium, the official lithium battery of Bassmaster. All right, next up on the shopping list here from the Columbus Fishing Expo, I had to stop in the booth for Dark Horse Tackle. And I'm going to give the guys props here for a second. Zach and Josh, the owners of Dark Horse, they have really adapted this business as it continues to grow. And it's really cool to watch. So they started off, obviously, as a subscription service. You subscribe, you get a box sent to you every month. And they're these really cool small companies right here from the United States that are making great products. And they still do the subscription box. You can still do that thing. But they're really morphing into this online retailer where you can actually buy individual packs of baits, individual hard baits, all from small businesses. They're kind of curating these businesses for you all on one website. So, if you normally buy from small businesses and you buy from a lot of small tackle companies, you go to one website, you buy your jigs, you pay $12 in shipping or whatever. You go to another site, you buy your crankbaits, you pay another $10 in shipping. Then you go over here, you get some trailers, you get some soft plastics, boom, there's another $8 in shipping. And then you have all these separate orders, separate tax, separate shipping, different times that they're arriving to your doorstep, all that kind of stuff. It is just kind of a pain sometimes ordering from all these different companies. Well, Dark Horse Tackle made that simple because basically now they're just taking all of these baits from these small companies, putting them all in one place. So you can just place one order and you can buy almost everything you want from these small businesses. So I think that's cool. Shout out to Josh and Zach. They're really kind of morphing into like the ALF or the Tackle Warehouse of small tackle businesses. So that's cool to see. But that meant that when I went over to their booth, no longer are they, more so focused on subscribing you to the monthly box. Now it's just a full showcase of all these really cool small business tackle companies. So I popped in there, obviously, and I had to break my credit card out. So the first thing that I bought 2 packs of Lake Fork Magic Shads. They're out of Emory, Texas. Really cool segmented soft plastic bait fish. I don't know if it has a length on the pack there, but I think they're right around 4 inches. They're a little bit thicker, cooler version of like a Yamamoto Seiko or something like that. It has that 4 really distinct segments in the body with thin plastic that kind of connects all of them. And then there's a really cool tail on it because the tail is inverted. So normally when you think of a bait fish tail, it's up and down. This one is a cross. So it's more like a dolphin tail or something like that. Very cool action out of this. You get a different action out of a Magic Shad than you do a regular paddle tail, a regular boot tail. I picked up Albino Shad, which is a really nice like pearl white, and then I picked another pack of Bourbon Street, which is like a dark green pumpkin with gold, purple, and like green little flakes in it. So I got those. Then I also bought a Koosh Ball jig that's made by HH Custom Baits. Really cool small micro ball head jig, single wire weed guard. I grabbed a 1/4 ounce, I think I did. And then I also bought 2 packs of that same company, HH Customs Koosh Crawl, which is their little crawl trailer that they put on that Koosh Ball jig. Really kind of like a chunk body, skinny, finessey, and then it has these 2 long skinny appendages off the back of that crawl that look more like rabbit ears or something than they do claws. So not a ton of aggressive flap to them, but more of like a wavy action, I'm assuming, just looking at them. So picked up a couple of those to try. I picked one in Molting Magic and then another one in Green Pumpkin Purple Flash. And then the last 2 things I picked up at Dark Horse, I picked up some Interceptor Baits Wrecking Ball Juniors. Kind of a cool looking worm. I've never tried them before, obviously just a finesse worm. But then the tail actually has a ball on it, just a tiny little ball of soft plastic, and that's how this worm ends at the tail. So I grabbed that to try out. I thought it looked cool. I just grabbed it for $3, and it's in Green Pumpkin. And then the other 2 things I picked up were 2 packs of Core Tackle hover rigs. And you might have heard about these. They're all the rage. Obviously, people are hover rigging all over the place. Essentially, it's just doing what we've done with tubes for years and now applying that to more minnow-style baits. So specifically, you have a jig head whose weight actually gets buried inside the plastic, and then all that pokes out of that plastic is the hook and then the line tie, versus a regular jig head where the weight is usually like right in front of the face of the little minnow or something like that, right? It's at the top, and you don't actually bury that weight. It's just in front of your plastic. That's not what you do with a hover rig. So I bought some hover rigs to try out this year. I got a pack of 3 32nd ounce and then a pack of 1/16 ounce. And the thing that stinks about these, they're fairly expensive. They're like $6 for a 3-pack, but I've been wanting to try them for a little while. Dark Horse had them available. I went and picked them up. So that's what I bought at Dark Horse Tackle. Next booth that I actually spent money at, I went over and made my way to the Nico Baits booth, which is a Japanese company that's been stepping up their presence here in America for quite a few years now. And we've talked about the Zaza Super Ned on the show before. It's a really nice, thick Ned rig bait if you're looking for super durable plastic and then a bigger diameter on your Ned rig. And the plastic is kind of in the same vein as like a Z-Man Elastec or the new Rapala Neds with that TPE material. Very stretchy, very durable baits. Also very expensive, but at least the durability kind of helps offset that. So I picked up 4 packs. They had a special where it was like 4 packs for $25 or $30 or something like that. So still expensive, but a little better than buying them at the store. I bought 2 packs in Neds, one in Obsidian, which is just their name for all black. And then I bought another pack in Eclipse, which is a very, very dark brown at the base. And then it's a lighter earthworm type brown right at the tail because I needed to stock up on those 2 colors. And then I also bought a pack of Zaza leeches. I haven't tried them yet, but they look nice. They look like something that obviously most people are going to like drop shot or something like that. But I think I'm going to throw them on a really tiny shaky head and just play around with them in the rivers and the creeks. So I'm going to throw some of those. And then I also bought a pack of natural colored Hellgrammites. And I have a buddy, Brian, who's been trying to get me to throw these Hellgrammites for years, but they're just so darn expensive that I never actually try them or give them the time that they probably deserve. So I did pick up a pack of those. You only get 4 of them in a pack, but they do look really nice. So I am going to give them their shot out there this year and try the Hellgrammites from Nico. So some cool baits from Nico, picked those up. And then here's where we get to some of you that were far too kind and you dropped off some baits that you wanted me to try this year throughout the expo. So listeners came up, they dropped things off and they said, hey, this is, one of my favorite things or whatever. I'd really like you to try this year. Not from the companies themselves, from listeners. I think that's a big difference, right? Don't go around looking for free stuff at these expos. It's more like, people coming up and saying, hey, I like this. I think you should try it. I think there's a big difference there. So the first thing that we got were a couple baits from Dave. Shout out Dave, a good buddy. He flew in from California to hang out with everybody this weekend. He is an OG listener of the show, and he brought some of his favorites. So he brought over 2 packs of hog molly baits, is what they're called, and they are ghastly gobies. And they honestly look awesome. They do have that traditional goby head, but then instead of having a regular tail on it, they have these like 7 tiny little ticklers off the tail, and that's the tail. So it almost makes like a soft plastic skirt. So I'm really excited to try these. I'm going to throw them on a little naked football head or a shaky head. I'm going to work them around and kind of see how they look. But they look great. The colors that he brought were Snow Brawl, which is obviously more of like a white kind of albino again color. And then we got Purple Pumpkin, which is a deep green pumpkin with some purple flake in it. So I'm excited to try those out. And then he also brought over, because he knows I love skinnier craws, he brought over some Swamp Pro Lures 4-inch hog washes. And Swamp Pro is a company, I believe they're out of Louisiana. They come in 10 in a pack. These hog washes do a good value there. And they're going to be just perfect little flipping and punching craws for this summer. So I'm excited to try those out. And then finally, Dave hooked us up with a Battle Baits minigun spinnerbait. And the spinnerbait looks unreal. I am pretty hard to phase when it comes to spinnerbaits, but this spinnerbait is a big, detailed head. It has a very thick wire. I'm guessing it's like 0.51. It comes in at a 1/2 ounce, very heavy. But then here's the kicker. It's micro-sized. So this thing fits in the palm of your hand. It's got a finesse, like 3.5 willow blade, I think is what they have on this, and then a 3/0 hook. Very cool, heavy, compact spinnerbait that lets you fish deeper while still maintaining that smaller profile. I dig it. I can't wait to try this one out. So thank you, Dave. You are the man. I appreciate you dropping off some baits for us to try. Next, we had Adam, awesome OG listener of the show again. And Adam dropped off 2 packs of Big Joshy Tiger Gillies. That is the show color that they had this year that everybody was wanting. They sold out like halfway through Saturday. They didn't have any the rest of Saturday or all the day Sunday. But I couldn't get away from the booth. But Adam was kind enough to go over, grab 2 packs, and throw them on the booth. And it was awesome. I appreciate it a ton. He got 1 pack of 275s, 1 pack of 325s. It is a really cool color. They did a good job. It's called Tiger Gilly, but it looks a lot more like a log perch darter or a little baby perch or a baby smallie or something like that. It's got those vertical kind of saddle stripes on it. So I know Mark, everybody over at Big Joshy did a great job with these. I'm sure they were a pain in the tail to actually paint, but very worth it when you look at the final results. We do have a lot of darters in our creeks and rivers around here, so I know these are going to be killer. And then my buddy Brian, who we talked about earlier, obviously the one that loves his Nico baits and wanted us to try those and trying to get us to do the Helgramites and stuff, he also dropped off a 2-pack of Nico craws for us to try. And again, I don't use their craws because they're very expensive and I'm just a cheapskate, but I'm excited to put those 2 craws through the ringer. Next here, we had a gentleman named Donnie who dropped off a pack of swim baits from a local-ish company. I think they're out of Kentucky, and it's called Ignite Baits. And they're the 4-inch Frenzy Shad, a good natural color to them, a nice oversized boot tail. I would assume this thing thumps pretty good in the water, but it's got a little bigger boot tail than I'm normally used to. It's a little bigger body than I'm normally used to. I kind of stop at that like 3.3, 3.5 inch type size, at least for smallies around here. But this is definitely going to get thrown once we get into like late spring, early summer when I'm actually out there on some of our local lakes and fishing for largemouth. So this looks great. Little handmade swim baits. I am anxious to try these. These are from Ignite Baits, the Frenzy Shad. And then finally, we had a listener, Scott Nelson, I believe a gentleman that you will hear from here in a few minutes when we cut to some of the live segments from the expo. But he walked up and he said, "Hey man, I have a gift for you." And he pulled out of his bag an original pack of 4-inch Havoc Pit Bosses in green pumpkin. And that is one of my all-time favorite baits that obviously Berkeley quit making a few years back. Absolutely legendary gift, and a gift that you would have to listen to the show to kind of know and understand. So very cool move from Scott. I will 1,000% be catching fish on those this year. Just seeing the bag brings back memories from a few years ago of great days on the water. My current PB largemouth came on a homemade jig with this exact trailer on it, same size and everything. So super cool move. Again, thank you, Scott. So those were the baits that I ended up coming home with after the expo was over. Again, I didn't get to go around a whole bunch because we were at the booth and seminars and stuff most of the time, but when I was able to sneak away, I was able to snag a few goodies to kind of throw this year. Okay, next, we're going to shake some things up a bit, and I wanted to do something at the booth that was a little interactive and at least get a couple listeners the chance to be on the show. Obviously not a million people, or else this episode would turn into a 5-hour episode, but just something fun, something different where we could still talk to listeners and give them a chance to kind of be on the show. So 5 lucky contestants over the weekend were randomly selected, people that came up to the booth. It was just completely random. We'd go like, a couple hours at a time, and then boom, we'd pick one. And those contestants got to compete in Tackle Talk Trivia. So we asked them 3 fishing-related questions, and if they get 2 of the 3 right, they win a $25 American Legacy Fishing gift card. But obviously there's only 3 questions, so if you miss more than 1 question, you leave empty-handed. So let's jump to our booth here at the Columbus Fishing Expo for a quick round of Tackle Talk Trivia with a few lucky listeners. All right, we have a trivia contestant here. We are here with
Matt.
All right, Matt, you got to answer 2 of these questions right. Out of the 3, you get $25 to American Legacy. The first question, which of these is not like the other? Largemouth bass, rock bass, spotted bass, smallmouth bass?
Rock bass.
Correct. Question number 2, true or false? It is possible for a bass to spawn more than once a year.
I'm going to go with no.
Okay, all the marbles here. Which of these is not a traditional type of jig? Flipping, finesse, wacky, football.
Wacky.
Correct. $25 American Legacy heading your way. Congratulations. All right, we have our next contestant. We are here with
Mike Kensinger.
And Mike, are you ready to try to answer 2 of the 3 questions right and you get an American Legacy Fishing gift card?
I am. Let's do it.
All right, your first question. What is the statewide limit for the number of bass you can keep per day?
5.
5 is correct. What is the age you require a fishing license in Ohio?
12.
Incorrect, 16. All right, a lot riding on this one. 2 gentlemen are tied for the most Bassmaster Classic wins in history. Name one of them.
Kevin Van Dam.
Correct. Congratulations. $25 to American Legacy Fishing. Thank you for playing. All right, we have our next contestant here. We are here with
Tim Troyer.
All right, first question. To the nearest pound, what is the Ohio state record largemouth bass?
I want to say right around 10.
13 pounds, 2 ounces. Crazy to think of a 13-pounder. This was also in like 1970-something. Who knows if it was even real? We have no idea. I haven't seen a picture of this fish. All right, let's go. How much is an annual resident fishing license in Ohio?
$25.
Correct. And 3. This is for all the marbles here. You got 1 right, 1 wrong. Which of these has not been a guest on Tackle Talk? Rick Clunn, Hank Parker, Jimmy Houston.
Hank Parker.
Correct. $25 heading to your inbox to American Legacy. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, we have a trivia contestant here. We have
Scott.
And Scott, are you ready to try and answer 2 correct questions here?
I'm ready. Results, not sure what's going to happen.
All right, question number 1. Common practice is to use a higher or lower gear ratio reel for crankbaits.
Lower.
Correct. The gentleman that currently holds the Ohio record smallmouth is a relative of what famous angler?
I have no idea.
The gentleman that has the state record smallmouth is related to Kevin Van Dam. Which of these is not like the other? Jig, frog, popper, or spook?
The jig.
Correct. All the rest are topwaters. You're going away with $25. Thank you. All righty. Next contestant, we are here with
Tim Miller.
All right, Tim, your first question here. True or false? Smallmouth bass can be found in all 88 counties of Ohio.
No.
That is true. Every single county you can find smallmouth bass in the state of Ohio. Next question. To the nearest pound, what is the state record bluegill?
I'm going to guess 3.
Correct. 3 pounds, 4 ounces, a dinner plate of a bluegill. That is a huge bluegill. All right, and your final question here. Over or under the current world record bass, 23 pounds. Over or under?
Let's go under.
Good guess. 22 pounds, 4 ounces. Giant bass. But yes, congratulations. $25 to American Legacy heading your way. All right, so there you go. Congratulations. All 5 of them win American Legacy Fishing gift cards, and I think that went about as well as it could. I actually talked to a couple of them afterwards and said, hey, good job obviously missing one of the questions, so you make that 3rd question count and really building up the tension and excitement there, so good for them. I hope everybody enjoys your American Legacy Fishing gift cards. A huge shout out to the boys over at ALF for supporting the show and the listeners with those prizes. We look forward to seeing what y'all buy with your gift cards. All right, and finally, we will get to some questions here in the mailbag in just a second, but first, we are brought to you in part by RTIC Coolers. RTIC coolers are my go-to. If I need anything from hard coolers, soft coolers, drinkware, they have apparel, they have stuff for the outdoors. RTIC has you covered. Everything that I've ever bought from RTIC, and again, I buy it with my own money. This is me as a regular customer talking to you. None of that gear has ever let me down. I have soft coolers I take out on the kayak. I have hard coolers that I take to, buddies' houses and tailgates, or, I took one of them to pick up my deer from the processor one time, like all that kind of stuff. They do a great job with, and just the drinkware. Maybe you don't need a cooler. Maybe you just need a new coffee mug. Maybe you just need a new tumbler for work. Whatever you need, go check out www.rticcoutdoors.com. They have great sales that are always refreshing, so I always tell people, check the website often. But go check them out again, www.rticcoutdoors.com. Keep the adventure going with RTIC. All right, guys, now let's break open the mailbag here, powered by Dakota Lithium.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast Mailbag, powered by Dakota Lithium Batteries. Adventure awaits at dakotalithium.com.
All right, the first question here is from Nolan, and he says, I'm looking at getting lithium batteries to run my Garmin at the console and Lowrance on the deck with live scope. Which Dakota battery do I need to buy and run those two graphs? Okay, so I think there might be a reverse there, right? Because if you have live scope, I'm guessing the live scope's at the front, so you probably have your Garmin at the front with the live scope, and then you got your Lowrance on the console. But either way, whatever you got. So you got two head units and you have live scope. And so I don't know the amp draw of all of those because I don't know what specific units you have. That would be very helpful, obviously, to know the specific Garmin, the specific Lowrance, because then you can actually calculate the kind of normal or the maximum amp draw. But with that being said, in a perfect world, I would say like a 12-volt, 100 amp hour would be awesome because you're running three things off of that one battery. So if you need power all day long to your Garmin head unit, your live scope black box, and your Lowrance unit, 100 amp hour is going to do you great. But if the 100 amp hour is not in the budget and you are on a tight budget and you're not going out for, 15 hours at a time or multiple days in a row without charging your battery, look at something like a 12-volt, 46 amp hour battery. That's what I use, right? I go out there, I have my Garmin hooked up to it, I have my black box hooked up to it, which I don't really use live scope hardly ever. I might take my live scope transducer with me maybe 5% of the time, if that. I don't really use it too much because I found out pretty quickly that it doesn't really help us for the way that we normally fish, but that's a whole different conversation. But I think the majority of the time, I'm just one graph, and that 46 amp hour can last me like multiple trips without charging. But especially in your case, like if you turn off your console unit or you put it on standby or whatever, when you're not actually back there at the driver's seat because you're not using it, obviously, if you're at the front of the boat, you can save some battery that way. But I would say, if it were me in a perfect world, again, I'd probably go 100 amp hour. In a pinch or on a tight budget, I'd probably look at that 46 amp hour as well. And as always, you can use code TackleTalk10, so you save 10% off whatever you end up going with. At least you don't have to pay full retail price for it, which is always a good thing. The next thing is from Alex, and he says, Hey, Andrew, I love the show and all the information you discuss on your episodes. I love listening to it on the way to and from work. With spring and summer coming around the corner, what are your top 5 to 10 tips for successful kayak fishing? It could be gear, advice, prep, whatever. I know you're not a huge kayak tournament angler, but I'm hoping to get into that this year and would love some help. I've already got an XL milk crate with rod holders, gear leashes, and I would love some extra advice. Your fellow Ohioan, Alex. Well, thank you, Alex. I appreciate it. We probably need to do a full episode on that one because that is a long conversation, a big rabbit hole that we could definitely go down. But what I would say that you need to either prep or know to kind of help you be a more successful kayak angler and a whole experience, I can think of a couple right off the bat that I think we can go over really quickly. So you already got rod leashes. That is definitely something that I would recommend. I've lost quite a few rods on my kayak that I wish I had leashed. But for some other ones, I would say first, buy a nice PFD. Buy one that inflates, that's not constricting, because you can get it for like $100 and you get a really nice one where you feel safe, but you're also free to actually enjoy your kayak, to move around, to fish without the restrictions of, a really bulky PFD. So I would say that's definitely one. I would say buy longer handled nets. This is something that took me years to figure out, but I'm glad I finally did. You'll thank me later when you don't have to get your PB within 2 inches of the kayak to get it in your landing net. My landing net now probably has a, 2.5 foot maybe long handle on it, maybe a tad longer than that. And it has significantly helped me land more fish because I don't have to get them quite as close before I do the swoop with my net. The other thing I'd say, pack a safety pack with you, something that you can use in case of emergencies. So, in that pack, I would say Band-Aids, Neosporin, Advil, allergy medicines. If you wear contacts, contact solution, toilet paper, all of those things can fit in a very, very, very small box that you won't even notice. But I promise you're going to be glad you have it when you need something out there on the water. And then the last thing I would say is, this is kind of a weird one, but I hope I can articulate this right, is perfect your load in and your load out method. So if you're car topping or you're putting it on a truck or a trailer, whatever you're doing with that kayak when you're transporting it to the water, make sure that process is as quick and as efficient as possible. Like from the time that I show up to the water until the time that I pull away when I leave, my process is exactly the same every single time. So for me, that is like unstrap the kayak, pull it out of my truck bed, put it on the wheels where they go in my scupper holes before my kayak hits the ground, wheel my kayak backwards a few feet, shut the tailgate, unhook the bed extender, break it down into 2 pieces, and then put it in the bed of my truck, unload all my fishing gear from the inside of the truck and put it in my kayak, just loose put it in there. You don't actually have to set everything up because we're going to take it out in a second. Then wheel your kayak down to the water, then take out all of your fishing gear, set it on the ground so that I can tip my kayak on the side, take the wheels out, then drag my empty kayak down to the water, load all my gear in it, like my seat, my graph, my rods, my battery, everything that I had sitting in my kayak when I transported it to the water on the wheels. Now I'm actually setting up the right way in my kayak, the motor, all that kind of stuff, get it ready to go, and then push off and go fish. And then my load out process is exactly the same, just the opposite order. So that keeps me efficient. It saves me time. It's just become like a routine and second nature to me where I spend less time getting in and out of the water and more time fishing. So I hope that helps you. The next question is from Jordan. He says, "What's up, Andrew? I truly appreciate you doing everything with your pod. It is top of the class as far as straight up fishing content goes. Great work. I have been doing part-time package deliveries as a side gig, and you have accompanied me over the past few months as I've went back through the show and listened to almost every old episode at this point. Tuesdays are now something I look forward to more than just tacos, so thank you for that. I'm in Minnesota, and I grew up throwing a hunk of lead on a hook with night crawlers on it in the Mississippi. We just toss it out, let it sink, prop the rod up, and wait for the drag to start ripping. Over the years, I caught everything from bowfin to buffalo carp, pike to flathead, and smallies were always abundant along with sheephead and channels. I was on a significant hiatus from fishing over the last decade or so. I'm 37 now, and last spring I caught the bass fishing bug bad, and now it's all I want to do. I'm getting a kayak in the spring, and I've always been a bank guy primarily and do okay on some lakes around me. My question is, what would you look for to target smallies in large, fast-moving, relatively shallow water? I think my average is about 7 to 8 feet for the stretch that I fish, from the bank specifically. Lots of rock, but there are some good sandy areas as well. Water is always somewhat stained and can get really bad in the spring. Congrats on the success of your show and your personal endeavors. I'm incredibly happy for you as someone who appreciates your represent the little guy approach, tight lines." Thank you, Jordan. That was very kind. I appreciate it. And the cool part about your question is you're right in my wheelhouse, man. This is exactly what we fish almost all the time when we fish rivers. So when I fish the river around here, we have relatively shallow water. It's fast. It easily floods in the spring. So we've definitely got some experience with the type of question that you're asking. So I would say a couple easy tips for spring would be target spawning areas, places where you know that those fish are going to move up and do their thing in the springtime. I know it sounds like a duh answer, but seriously, like look for those areas where there's a nice bank that's got a good substrate and it's out of the main current, but it has access to that current nearby. So like on the bends in the river where you might have the main current on one side and then just off of it, there's a bank that has like 2 to 3 foot water and it has a really good mix of sand, gravel, and very small rock. Because around here, most of the good spawning areas that I know about in the river have a good mix of bottom composition. So it's not just a sandy bottom, not just chunk rock or gravel rock. It's a mixture. So I would look for those type of areas that have sort of like a transition between those different bottom makeups. The other thing I would say is I stick with very, very dark lures when it comes to the dirty water in the springtime. I know some other folks that do chartreuse. I have buddies that go really, really bright and they do really well too. But somewhere on that like two ends of the spectrum, a lot of times we obviously gravitate toward either really dark or really bright. So I lean toward all black. You guys know me. You know I love my contrast. I love all that kind of stuff. And that goes for everything. It goes for bottom baits. It goes for moving baits. That's chatter baits, spinner baits, Ned rigs, craws, jigs. I really like those dark colors in the spring to help me offset that water clarity issue. But I would look for bottom that has a good mixture of textures. I would look for areas that are in that 2 to 3 foot deep range right out of the main current. I would look for places that have access to that current nearby, and then I would also look at really, really dark colors for your lure choice. All right, and our final question here is from Zach, and he says, "Hey Andrew, love your podcast. You've taught me so much about fishing. It would have otherwise taken me hours on the water to figure out myself. I've always wanted to get into heavy bait casting setups for big freshwater applications and also for striper fishing as well, but I don't have the extra cash to shell out for a Lexa or a Tranx. Do you have any recommendations for heavier casting reels, preferably in the 300 size, that won't break the bank but are still quality equipment? I'm weary around cheaper equipment for saltwater applications because it tends not to last, but the price of those bigger reels is certainly a turnoff. Thanks for any advice you can give. Again, love the podcast, Zach." Oh man, that is a tough one, buddy, because I'll be honest, your beefy 300 size reels that can handle saltwater or big striper or muskie, things like that, usually are not cheap. So those two things don't normally go hand in hand. And a good example of this is like, even look at the real cheap brands. Think of the brands that usually have the cheapest reels, like Cast King, Pissafun, things like that. The Cast King, what's it called? The Capstan, I think is what they call it, like KAPSTAN, I think, which is like their bigger size reel from Cast King, which is normally very inexpensive, is like $150, and that's Cast King. Go to the other side. It's Pissafun. I think they call it I'm going to butcher this, Alijos, something like that, but it's ALIJOZ. And they have a saltwater edition of that reel that's $120 from Pissafun. And then there's a freshwater version I think they've also got for around like $90, but I would be very weary of throwing that for saltwater striper. So it's going to be very tough to find a big 300 size reel at anything around or under that. And again, those are two brands that don't necessarily have the best reputation for durability. So the reel that I would recommend, you actually already mentioned, and it's the Daiwa Lexa. And the Daiwa Lexa 300 is a fantastic reel. I've had one for about 5 years now. It is my main muskie reel. And for the price, they're extremely solid. Now, I can't attest to the saltwater side of things, but from the big fish freshwater side, I've been very happy with this reel over the past few years. Is it a Tranx? No, it's not a Tranx, but it also doesn't have a Tranx price tag. A Shimano Tranx 300 will probably run you around $320. A regular Daiwa Lexa 300, not the new weird HD version, just the regular 300 size Daiwa Lexa will run you like $220, I think. So it's about $100 less. And it's a great reel. So in a world where, the Cast King Capstan or whatever is $150, I would rather pay just a little bit more to pay $220 and get something like a Daiwa Lexa. So if $220 is just completely out of your budget, which again, I very much understand, then I would look at like Facebook Marketplace, American Legacy's used page, eBay, because Daiwa Lexas come up for sale all the time on the used market, and you can save quite a bit of money that way too. So I would lean you toward Daiwa Lexa, but that's just me. All right, guys, that is today's episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate you guys a ton. Again, everybody who stopped by the booth at the Columbus Fishing Expo, I cannot tell you how much it meant to me to get to see you all, get to meet you guys, get to actually put faces to the names, and really kind of become friends with a lot of you guys. So I appreciate everybody stopping by, everybody that took pictures, bought hats and stuff. We signed a bunch of hats. It was a really fun time. And again, just making that part of your weekend adventure or, driving hours and hours and hours just to come here and hang out or listen to the seminars or whatever means a ton. So thank you guys. We literally have the best listeners in the country. I will die on that hill. So thank you. But as always, find us on the website, tackletalkpodcast.com. You can submit your mailbag question there for your chance to hear yourself on an upcoming episode. Find us on social media, Instagram and Facebook at Tackle Talk Podcast. Shoot us an email, tackletalkpodcast@gmail.com. And we'll see you right back here next Tuesday for another brand new episode of Tackle Talk.
Thank you for listening to the Tackle Talk podcast. Tackle Talk is produced by Andrew Hayes. Copyright 2021. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.